Hey everyone, and welcome back to another teaching and learning video. Today I want to talk in this brief video a little bit about some DE, distance education or online education best practices. We all know that we can always improve our game in terms of teaching, and particularly for the new instructor in online or distance education, I often hear questions about just what are the most successful techniques or approaches to use, particularly as you're new to teaching in an online format. We've talked about for many years that online teaching is not for everybody, but it's becoming more common, and I think more and more of us realize post-pandemic, post-COVID-19, that online education is both enjoyable and as meaningful as face-to-face or ISP education, but it often has its own unique set of challenges. So today we'll talk about just some broad-based overview of some of the best practices or approaches that we could think about, or even themes or concepts that really make sense in terms of DE pedagogy. So the first one is thinking about clarity in organizing your class. One of the things you'll hear time and again, whether you're taking our local POCR training, which is our peer online course review process, or if you're taking a local training here, Learning Canvas, is that you need to have a really clear outlined class. One of the worst things for a student as a learner is going to a class and not being able to figure out early on exactly what they need to do to be successful in the class, or even something as simple as, what do I do in the first week of my class? I can't figure out where to start my class. Hence the need to have clarity in your home page. Really recommend doing a welcome video, and by the way, the topics I'm addressing today are all covered very extensively in the Teaching and Learning website under those various areas, whether it's technology or teaching. So be sure to check all this out there, where there's much more depth, clarity, and conversation about some of these approaches we're talking about today. But one of the things you do is you have a navigation video, have a welcoming home page. Sarah and Kata did that wonderful training workshop for a technology grant focused on creating welcoming DE classes. That's really a great place to start to learn some of these techniques as we talk about best practices. Another opportunity is to have clarity in your module structure. We really like you to use modules and not have a bunch of disorganized or undifferentiated pages where students don't have the sense of how to start the class and how to progress along. I like a lot of clarity in my module structure, where I always have the textbook reading as maybe the first component in the module. The second one might be assignments. The third one might be discussion boards, etc. And then that clarity or that redundancy or organization of content, when you move from week 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, starts to almost appear like muscle memory to the student, because they understand the structure that you have, that you take to the organization of your class. So modules are a great place to start in terms of clarity and organization. And we can talk about this some more in some of these future slides here, but I think this is a great place to start to make sure your class is clear for the student. Now next, we like to talk about faculty presence. There was maybe a misnomer when DE education first started, not just here but other places, where people thought, whether they were students or teachers, that the great thing about an online class is you don't have to do much, or you don't have to be there in real time, or you could work at your own pace. Indeed, correspondence education is really frowned upon by the major accrediting organizations across the world. When we're accredited, they want to see that things like faculty presence are taking place. They want to see that things like student-to-student interactions are taking place. If we don't have that, if we don't have a class that's actually being taught actively by a faculty member, then we could actually lose our accreditation. So one of the most important things to commit yourself to initially as a new DE instructor is to make sure that you're there in the class. You're not physically there. You may choose to have Zoom sessions or not. We can talk about that offline. There's a lot of flexibility there for you to make that decision. But if you're not actively participating in the class, and let's say there's a fight that breaks out between students on a discussion board, or let's say that students are trying to complete their quiz and they've been posting on a discussion board for help. They're saying, you know, dear instructor, I'm trying to figure out how to complete this quiz, but it's not clear to me. If you're not actively engaging with that class, reading those comments, the students are missing out, and sometimes they'll miss out on an important assignment or clarity that they need in completing an assignment. So we always ask that you maintain active faculty presence in your class. I always like to say log onto your class every day of the quarter. I just think you have to. I know you might take the weekends off, but it sometimes could be very quick. Like if you just check your discussion boards, or depending on how you have your notifications set up on Canvas under your account setting, that can be a great way to have your phone pinged if something comes up, or if new discussions appear, or if a student contacts you on inbox and so forth. So take advantage of the notifications under your account setting, because that's one great way to make sure that you're keeping up with everything as the students may come in with new questions or concerns, or new discussion posts appear on your discussion boards. Okay, the next area we can talk about is interactivity and experience. And this really goes along with faculty presence, but it suggests the idea that you should make your class interactive. So whether it's discussion boards or video lectures that you do, or student collaborative projects, or maybe using Labster or some kind of interactive, immersive, experiential form of learning and design, that's going to be one way to make sure that your students are engaged, that they're enjoying the class, and that it's a meaningful experience. Nobody likes probably going to a boring lecture where someone is just talking at you for hours. Nobody probably likes watching really dry tutorial videos on YouTube that is just kind of taking you through the motions of learning something. So having an interactive and experiential based class is really key. There are a slew of techniques that we can use to approach this. Again, I advise you to check out the videos and the resources on the TNL website. Come to one of our teaching talks in the fall, winter, or the spring, because you'll learn new approaches to creating experiences for students. You'll learn about new technologies available. We have all sorts of software you can use in and outside of Canvas. We have YouTube. We have Zoom. We have so many opportunities out there to make the class much more than just a very boring correspondence class where students click on links and they passively learn something. Nobody likes the old days maybe of K-12 teaching where the teacher said, you're going to sit down and do a worksheet. You do the worksheet, you turn it in, and that was your time. That's not a very creative approach to classroom management. So the same should apply to a distance education or online class, such that you have meaningful and experiential approaches to designing the learning and the teaching in that classroom. So much to do in terms of interactivity and experience. Another area that really relates to this is thinking carefully about the different learning and teaching modalities out there. If you teach a face-to-face class, we always say, please make sure that when you teach a class, you don't just do all lecture. Pass out handouts, do some group projects, watch a short film, interact with the students on an interactive quiz like Quizlet or something of that nature. Show some media, have students complete an interactive website, do activities that involve their kinesthetic senses where they're moving around and doing things actively in a classroom, depending on what you're teaching. Do demonstrations. Demonstrations are a great way to really approach learning, to make it experiential and meaningful, and to address all those different learning modalities that we know exist. Not all students learn just from lecture, so make sure you use different approaches when you teach the material. Canvas allows you to do a lot of that because there are so many apps and cool things you can do. The same thing with Zoom. Here in 2022, we now have a local Zoom sub-account, and there are all kinds of cool apps that you can use to try to make the class more experiential and focus on different learning and teaching modalities. So be sure to check out some of my Zoom resources as we look at the Zoom apps available for you teaching a distance or online class. Think about multimedia. I mentioned some of this, but if you're using Zoom, you can do the screen share that allows you to share multimedia live in a class. You could take advantage of YouTube. You can take advantage of all the wonderful and great interactive websites that allow students to do experiential or even collaborative learning. You could do project-based learning that uses multimedia. So whatever you can do to extend the learning beyond just text, I think is very meaningful and appreciated by students. If you can do these kinds of videos, record a welcome video. You don't have to do a lot. Watch some of my training videos talking about how to record a welcome video, even on your camera like my iPhone here, and then how to even edit that video, create simple titles and transitions between different video clips just on your phone. So you'd be surprised how easy it is for you to leverage multimedia, even if you feel like you're not a total techie like I maybe am. So use the multimedia as much as possible. Availability of resources. So one of the things we like to do in Canvas, because it's so full-fledged, full-featured, is to provide students with resources. These could be campus resources, and if you haven't done so yet, please go to Canvas Commons and download the Canvas Student Suite, Student Resources and Policies. So these have laid out for you already all of the various campus resources, like our food pantry, all of the class policies, distance education policies about technology, all the policies about plagiarism and so forth. So this is a great place to go to find ready-made resources that you can use in your class and provide to your students. And quite a few people have downloaded, just this one has been downloaded into 61 different classes. So I think that's a really good response. The other kind of resources you could have in your class would be anything related to your discipline. So if I'm teaching an anthropology class and I want students to learn about culture, maybe I have some links or bonus readings available for the really advanced student who wants to go and find out more information. So I think it's really important to have all the resources available to your students. Stuff about the food pantry, stuff about housing, all the stuff that's related to distance education, challenges with technology and accessing computers and using the on-campus services. Those are all great resources to have in your class. You don't know if the students will use those resources, but they're available, and Canvas as a full-fledged LMS or learning management system is a really great place to go to provide all these for the students. So as much as is possible and practical in your class, please include these for your students. The other thing that's really important is to focus on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I advise all of you to look at my upcoming video on using this great resource that Sue and Amber introduced us to at one of our All Faculty Day trainings. The Achieving the Dream Teaching and Learning Toolkit. This has so many great resources to use. It's freely available online. You can incorporate a lot of diversity and inclusion exercises and techniques and opportunities that maybe you're unaware of. The other thing I advise you to do is go to your discipline pages. So if you teach sociology, go to the ASA, the American Sociological Association web pages. Google specific resources like Sociology and Diversity Strategies, or Psychology and Diversity Strategies, or DEI Strategies. You will actually find journals dedicated to this topic and specific to your discipline. One of the important things to do that we learned from Brian Yering at one of our All Faculty Days is to really incorporate diversity and inclusion in class content. He gave a great lecture talking about the genderedness of sculpture and of painting and specific human forms and the male gaze. And I thought that was a great introduction to how we might use this in our own disciplines, regardless of what we might be teaching in our specific fields. So focus on the DEI efforts. I know more trainings will come in the fall, including from 2022 from Hotep Consulting. So be on the lookout for that as we hear about these trainings coming up for us. And then lastly but not least, create personalized experiences in your classroom. Anytime you can personalize education, whether it's face-to-face, ISP, or DE, it's always appreciated by our students. So just make sure that when you're thinking about exercises, activities, discussions, if it's appropriate for your discipline like it is for me in the social sciences, I will ask students, for example, to take a personalized approach or reflection on a particular topic. If we're talking about race or gender, I'll ask my students, okay, how does this relate to you regardless of your personal background? You need to think about your personal background and be what we call reflexive in approaching the class conversations that we have. This is going to vary from discipline to discipline, but if you can make it meaningful and personalized to our students, there's good evidence that students are going to learn better. They're going to take that information in and not just learn it in a rote way, but really learn it in a way that is meaningful and personalized for who they are and how they're approaching your topic as they see the world through their unique lenses. So this is not an exhaustive list, but I wanted to provide these to you because it's been on my mind recently thinking about how we can improve distance education. We all have a role to play in this. As I'm teaching a DE class in the fall, as many of you are, I certainly have to up my game every time I teach a class. I've been teaching for close to 30 years and teaching distance education since the early 2000s, and I certainly am always thinking about a new technique or a new approach. So hopefully some of these will work for you. These are very general, but they all have their offshoots or very specific areas of concern. If you want more information, if you want to learn about how to apply some of these in your class, and you want to find that specific information, reach out to me, or as I mentioned, go to ltccteachingandlearning.com, click on the various areas. I recommend for this 2 tabs, technology. This will teach you about general technological approaches, about Canvas, about Zoom and how you can use Zoom effectively in your class. And then also click on teaching and specifically scroll down. Foundations is a great place to start, certainly to learn generally about successful teaching approaches. But scroll down to the DE teaching track when you get to the teaching page. And then look at all this information presented to you about plagiarism, about OER, or open educational resources, how to create online presence, how to approach DE pedagogy, how to think about engagement in your virtual class, DE class policies, and so forth. A lot of great information here for you to take a look at. I hope you find it meaningful. In putting this together, I really did want to think about successful teaching approaches and how to improve this in all of our teaching modalities, including distance or online education. So that will do it today. Thanks for listening today. Good luck in teaching your distance education or online class. Reach out if you have questions, and I'll be back with additional videos here from LTCC Teaching and Learning.